I tried making a script for this, but I just couldn't do it. I'm quite good at writing, but this subject is so muddy and so completely filled with minds. I just couldn't make a proper coherent story where I was satisfied with every aspect of it. So this is just gonna be a rant, and there's nothing I can do about it. As the title likely already suggested, this is about, well, I hesitate to say it, but the social justice warrior SJW culture thingy. Let's just call it that. For many decades, people have fought and striven for equal rights and later equal opportunities for people of the LGBT community, non-whites and women. And I think we can all agree this is inherently a very good thing. It's good for everyone. The more people can achieve their potential, the better our entire society will function. I don't think many people will disagree with that inherently. But I think in the past 15 years or so, something changed about this movement. The more obvious things like equal rights have mostly been achieved. Gay marriage is legal in, well, more and more countries, definitely in the one I live in, the Netherlands. Women already have had equal rights, like judicial rights, for quite a long time. So the movement changed to equal opportunity, which is equally important, because rights don't really grant you that much if you still can't achieve anything because people won't let you reach your potential because of prejudices. However, with that change, let's just say it has become less obvious what is right and what is wrong. Like if there is just a law that says, I don't know, women can't have property, that's an incredibly easy thing to point to, like this is the injustice. These days the injustices are more hidden and they're definitely more subjective, which means that now more than ever there is merit on both sides of the debate. A good example, I guess, would be, well, let's just say, and this is a very touchy subject, but everything is a touchy subject when it comes to this discussion, abortion. For a while, like when it was just the question, should abortion be legal, it was relatively straightforward to decide which was the morally right side, for most people, at least most modern people. Yeah, abortion should be legal, at least in some form. It should be legal. But now that it is legal, like, how should someone be able to take a crap ton of abortions? Should it be possible to use it as a form of anti-conception? Till what week should it be legal? Like, we can all agree, well, at least some of us don't agree, but most rational people agree that at conception a baby is not, well, a baby yet, and you're not doing anything wrong by cancelling the pregnancy. But with more and more pre-born babies surviving, the term at which women can perform abortions creeps ever closer to the point at which a baby can also just survive. And at that point the question, are we killing a baby, becomes a lot more rational. Well, I'm getting a bit off track here, but the point is, more than ever, both sides of debates can have their merits. And like, I'm left-wing. I made another video about Trump where I was also very negative about him. I definitely consider myself left-wing, but what I think a lot of the more left-wing like media and parties and movements are doing wrong is they think they have the absolute truth in their hands. You're with them or you're a bigot. And that's just not true. This new change in like social rights movements, they're doing stuff that is so subtle now that it's incredibly easy to fall on the wrong side of the discussion. Additionally to this, there's another problem, which is quite inherent to people in general. We love thinking in a us versus them mentality. And originally that was one of the main causes, I think, for stuff like racism and sexism and homophobia. Like, they aren't part of us, so screw them. I think that was one of the main reasons. But that very same thing is now creeping up on the very movements trying to fight those injustices. You can see that, like, recently you have this entire drama around Captain Marvel with Brie Larson. Let's just say being less than subtle when it comes to her fight for equal opportunities for women. Like, she may not literally say it, but when I watch her talk about it, all I can think is, like, she just doesn't like white men. And I know she said she doesn't hate them, but everything just, she exudes a condescending vibe. It's very unpleasant, and it's also very counterproductive, because the last thing you want to do is cause more polarization on this subject, because then you won't get anything done. Look at the US government. Like, the polarization between the left and the right has caused the entire country to basically be in shutdown half the time. Nothing gets done, and people instinctively act defensively if you attack them. So you have to be very careful when, like, for example, in the case of sexism, when fighting for equal opportunities for women, to not let that transform into fighting against men. And it's a very easy thing to do, and that can happen a lot more subtly than, well, blatantly saying fuck men or something. And I think that is what has been happening. And I know this sounds like me like trying to be a victim, because obviously I am a man. But it's not, because it's just such a shame that something inherently conceptually good has been transformed into the same toxic culture that also like covers the entire political spectrum wars, basically. And I really wish we could do something about that, but I don't really know what. It's almost inherent for human beings to act like this. We subscribe to a certain way of thinking, and then we take it to the extreme, because it's the easy way. And every piece of information that gets to us, if it supports our thoughts, we accept it. And if it doesn't support our thoughts, we just ignore it, or we call it fake news or whatever. A very good example of that is, like, I've been brought up left-wing. My parents were left. And I am still quite left, and it was very easy for a long time, whenever someone talked about the pay gap between men and women, to be like, oh yeah, that's sexism, we should do something about that. And everyone who said, like, no, it's just bad use of statistics, in my mind for a long while was like, yeah, they just don't want to admit the truth. I am right because I'm left, and the left I am right but I am left. That's actually kind of funny. But I am correct because I'm on the left and we are the good guys. But they were right. The pay gap, like at least the one with like 20 or 30% that's often cited, is a misuse of statistics, because it just takes the average income of all working women and men and looks at the difference between them. It doesn't take into account what work they do or how many hours they make, which of course is essential, because what you really want to know is, are men and women paid the same for the same work, which is a completely different story. So yeah, because of this we versus them mentality, we are willing to put up with a lot of false information as long as it supports our view. And this is inherent with humans. So it's almost like we're stuck in a circle with first, for example, racism and sexism. Then you've got the counter movement, which fights it, but at some point they become, well, not as toxic, but definitely quite toxic. And you have people fighting them again, which is the hordes of people on the internet getting an allergic reaction the moment anyone says sexism or feminist. The people who are so scared of social justice warriors. And inevitably, which is already happening in my opinion, that same movement also goes too far, and you get people fighting them. It's a never-ending circle, and I don't really know how to break it. And it's, well, at the very least, I think it's very important that people are aware of this. The more people are aware of it, the more people don't contribute to it, or at least try to minimize their contribution. I'm not going to pretend I never contributed to it. I'm probably contributing to it right now, and I just don't know it. Secondly, what I also think is very important to fight this is the silent majority. If I look on Facebook comments, I see tons of retarded people. I'm sorry, I can't. I'm not allowed to say retarded. Like whenever something about migration comes up, I see the most horrible comments. Like, oh, I wish they drowned at sea while moving to Europe. The stuff that's just insane. And I see very little people disputing that. And that can easily give you the image of an entire country of racists, which is just not true. It's just that the majority that holds a more reasonable opinion doesn't bother going into discussions with these people, which is understandable because you're not going to change their mind. But it also results in a very skewed view of society on social media. I annoy the absolute crap out of my friends and family by constantly going into debates on Facebook, and I admit that is a very annoying habit of mine. But I do think more people should do it because it shows that those extremes, both on the left and the right, they are not representative of the average person. And if it does seem like it's representative of the average person, people will inevitably be drawn to those sides because people want to be normal, people want to be average. So I think it's very important that silent majority also speaks up. All in all, this was a very convoluted rant. I'm well aware of that, but I'm very inexperienced with making YouTube videos. I started making these basically on the advice of other people who became rather annoyed with me like spouting all my own opinions on Facebook. So I guess this is a nice alternative where they don't have to see it. But I do feel like people aren't paying enough attention to this. Like they're so focused on being part of one of the two sides, they forget to step back and take a step back and, well, basically see that both extremes are wrong. And it might sound boring, but the middle and the compromise is often a lot more productive and better for society. And I really hope I kind of got my point across despite all the ranting.